Hello. Uh, Hi, it's Dr. David Haase here, and welcome to our Fireside chat. So many things have gone on in the world. You even hear some sirens going on outside. That seems to be so stressful and so intense all the time. And one of my staff members came into the office, and we started just having a chat about her troubles and what was going on in her life, her health goals. And she said, I left feeling so good. And, and she said, I just wish we could talk to you more about these things that are challenging in our life, just like we sitting in a living room. And I kind of went back to Mr. Rogers and FDR and thinking, a lot of information comes across just too intense. And I think that especially when we start thinking about aging, right? When we start thinking about how we are, what's to become of us? What does our long-term health and well-being really mean? And that's what it stymies a lot of us. Because we don't necessarily want to engage into the whole idea of aging, but then again, we know that we really should. So I'd like to take this approach and dig in a little bit, and let's talk about vibrant health and longevity to 120. How about that? When you saw the title of this webinar, did you go like, what's he talking about? Right? I mean, did you really go like 120? Who would want to live that long? Or did you have an idea that, oh, that's not possible? Or what was it going on inside of you? Because something picked your interest up, right? Something got you going. And I'm going to be taking questions at the end of this segment here. And so please, if you've got questions, make sure you put them in the chat bar. We'll try and get to them just as well as we can. And so if we start thinking about 120, let me start by asking you a question. All right. And I really want you to sit and answer it. How old do you want to be when you die? Because newsflash, you are going to die. And so let me ask you, what age is it that you want to be when you leave this plane of existence? So, okay, do you have that number in your mind? I mean, really, are you clear on that number? Because it's important to start thinking about. So let me ask you this. In that number, and some people say, man, it's 70. Some people say it's 80, some 90. Some people say, man, I want to live to 120. And I get that. But let me ask you this. How do you want to feel that year, right? And so when you are, whatever number that is, how do you want that year to be? Okay. Do you want it to have, do you want to have relatively little pain, right? So comfortable, right? Do you want to have good movement ability, getting around well? Do you want independence, right? Do you want to have that, that feeling of that I'm contributing something in the world, that it's important that I'm here for other people? What level of energy do you want? Do you want to have some vibrant energy, spicy, feisty, recognizing that you've obtained a lot of wisdom and you're now able to share that and have the opportunity to share that? What about sex? Huh? One of my favorite couples was a couple in their 90s, and they loved coming in and bragging about their sex life. And they had a great time with it. Wonderful. I mean, what a beautiful pleasure in life. And to have that be robust through many, many birthdays. Amazing. What about your mood? How do you want your mood to be that last year of your life? Do you want it to be open and grateful? Or do you want to be anxious? Do you want to be afraid of things? Do you want to have joy and lightheartedness? Are you want to be able to kind of roll with the punches? How do you want your memory to be? Because your memory kind of enables how you're going to share life with others and how you're going to feel and function. What do you want your memory to look like in that year? You want it to be sharp and being able to remember both things that have recently happened and things that are far, that happened way in the past. So you can pull that wisdom together. Okay, so think of that, right? And that's a pretty, if I imagine, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and it typically turns out the same, that yes, you want that last year of life to be that way. And so there's really two things. A lot of you right now are not experiencing that as a description of your life now. So we have work to do, right? We have work to do. But that aside, and we definitely need to work on that. But that aside, if that number for you, let's say it was 85, if that was how your life was when you're 85, would you want another year? Huh? Would you maybe want to go to 86? And most people are going to say, yeah, I want to go to 86. So how about if 86 was pretty much described that way, with good energy, mood, memory, comfort, ability to contribute, a feeling of purpose in life? Would you want to go to 87? Yeah. And so what we realize is that a lot of our concern with aging and where it goes has everything to do with our quality of life. And it's very important for us to recognize that these symptoms that we associate with aging are really end stage events. If you have a symptom happening, that's your body screaming out that it really wants you to pay attention and do something differently in your life. Figure out the underlying cause so that you don't have accelerated degeneration. So I really think it's profound when we start to think about aging to 120, which is very biologically possible. And we're garnering so many more new tools right now. I've had the fortune of working with some of the most cutting edge longevity experts in the world. And we've been able to start prioritizing what are the interventions that have the most promise for doing the most good. And we'll be sharing some of those tips later on in this webinar, talking about some of those specific things. But it's really important, first of all, to recognize that if you don't want to live to 120, heck, if you don't want to live to 80, maybe you don't even want to live till next year, that's a much bigger problem. And we have this great opportunity to be honest with ourselves and dig into that. And because I can guarantee you your life can be better. The body is designed to heal. At Maxwell Clinic, one of our values is relentless optimism around the body's capacity to heal. And we have that rational, relentless optimism because the body can heal. And you can have a higher level of vibrancy and longevity together. So if we think about, kind of what are we doing here in medicine, it's this great battle of life versus entropy. Entropy is the second law of thermodynamics, where a system has a tendency to have increased disorder, to just decay, and hey, anybody sees a teenager's room, yes, there is a tendency to disorder that exists inside the universe. And life is really all about us making order out of disorder, perpetuating life, repairing our bodies so that we don't degenerate and decay. This quest of vibrant health has everything to do with Maxwell. Maxwell, and you see our little logo in the back here. Ta-da! A great little bookend was made. Precious gift. But Max is really about the maximum opportunity you have to be the fullest version of yourself. And well is that soulful enjoyment of the moment, that surrender of the present moment. Maxwell is really stating that, man, you're perfect the way you are, and you could use a little work. It is that striving while being satisfied. And that's what we see as a better definition of the term health. Oftentimes health kind of We don't examine that. So as you work with us, we'll help you examine what is your Maxwell, what is keeping you from having that high quality of life so that you would want longevity in the first place. Now, what is aging? If we're going to talk about vibrant health and longevity to 120 and beyond, we need to ask, what is aging? And aging, very simply, is any period of time when you have more degeneration than regeneration. The good news is your body's always regenerating, right? It is always regenerating. You cut your arm with a knife and it just seemingly magically knits itself together. The body knows how to heal an injury. It knows how to heal a trauma. And that's our job to, in the world of healthcare, to find what are all the barriers that may keep that individual from healing, and then remove those as best we can. And then also find what are the things that person needs to actually create health. So I think of it in general terms, right? So there are bad things in everybody's life. We call those toxins or stressors, right? So mercury is terrible. I mean, we've done a terrible thing to our oceans because most all of the large fish are having increasing mercury levels year after year after year. And I used to encourage people to eat fish all the time. And it's getting harder to have that recommendation. It's only a few that now have low enough mercury levels where they're really healthy, where the benefits of fish are still outweigh the negatives of the mercury that are in there. So that's a toxin. And those are things that we have to watch for broadly. But each of us don't just have all of these general toxins and stressors and things like that to deal with. We also have our personal kryptonite, right? What are the things that throw us off because of our unique genetics and our unique phenotype, which is all of our genes working together over time to bring this particular body forward. So if you're going to try to remove those nasty things from your body, you have to think about all the general things, but you also have to look for where are the specific things that are most important for me so that I can thwart disease and disability. Likewise, when we start thinking about the forces of regeneration, there are general good things, right? We need to have exercise and water, nourishment, relationship. But there too, there are some parts there that I call ambrosia, right? Which is the food of the gods. And just like kryptonite was, a toxin for somebody who is even as great as Superman, ambrosia is that food that really supercharges you and enables you to have a much higher fulfillment of your biologic possibilities. For me, one of the supplements called Oncodetox ES happens to be a really important ambrosia for me. It turns on a host of genes that upregulate detoxification ability, upregulate the production of glutathione, the recycling of glutathione. And what that does is it decreases oxidative stress and increases the removal of toxins. Now, while I think that's good for most people, for me, my particular genetics, it is fabulous because I have some challenges in those areas. And I'm doing everything possible to make sure that I'm meeting my own body's biologic needs to repair. So remember, we're a system, right? You're a system. You're a really complex system. There's a lot of parts and pieces to you. And after getting to do whole genome analysis and whole metabolome analysis, transcriptome analysis, all kinds of ohms, ridiculous fun science, I keep just becoming overwhelmed with just how complex we are. And what's most important about vibrant health and longevity is that you seek out what are your unique links in your chain, because aging happens there. So finding, and this is why symptoms can be so helpful for us, because symptoms help direct us very rapidly to some links that are already under great strain or maybe have already broken, and other supports are trying to take their place. So Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Any of you remember that book? It was amazingly important in my development. And he said there's really two kinds of events in the world. There are events that are urgent, and there are events that are important. And some things can be urgent and important, and some things can be non-urgent and non-important. But it seems like we've spent a lot of time on what's urgent, right? Because that's what gets clicks. I mean, I don't participate a lot in social media because I realize it decreases the quality of life of almost everybody that engages it. If you can remove one toxin from your life, decrease your consumption of social media, no matter what your political preferences or belief systems are, I will tell you, you are more depressed. You are more angry. Your life quality is less the more social media you take in. And so that's something that, but we like the urgency, right? We like the trauma. We like the, even anger gets our dopamine up, and the advertisers know this, right? The advertisers know this, and they really, they know that you are the product, right? Your eyes, your attention is the product. So why do I talk about this during a longevity talk? Because guess what? Stress kills, and it kills dramatically, consistently, and effectively. Stress shortens your telomeres. Telomeres are little endocaps on your DNA. And the more stress you have, so the worse sleep you have, the more anger you're harboring, the more bitterness that is inside, the less time you take to just be yourself and to be with yourself and to be loving. You are shortening your days on this earth, and you're absolutely decreasing the number of good days on this earth. And that's a shame. That's really a shame. So think about, what is important in my life? And I think that's one of these great opportunities we have. I'd like you to ask yourself, what is important in your life? Because it's your life. You get to run it. You get to live it. And what I want for you is more happiness and ease and comfort and joy. I think those are good things for us. And I want those for other people as well, because guess what? When my neighbor is happy and peaceful and pain-free, they're nicer to me. And I live a safer and happier life as well. So it makes sense. It's even from just a pure selfishness standpoint. It's a good thing. Wow, this fireside chat vibe is really working for me. It's really working for me. And I think I'm always going to have a fireplace going behind me. So I promised you 4 secrets, 4 of the worst inhibitors of successful, healthy aging. 4 things that absolutely wipe out the potential for us to get to 120 and certainly to enjoy that process, right? And here are the 4. Please remember them, because there's never been anything more true in how people create health and what can actually shut it off. So let me tell you the first one. The first one is fear. Fear. Fear is the worst toxin that there is. Fear shuts off love. Fear shuts off connection. Fear shuts off all kinds of healthy hormones. So we start making the hormones of inflammation and agitation and irritability in our body when we are afraid. And advertisers love us to be afraid, because if we're afraid, we're searching for a solution. And if they make us afraid, kind of whatever they say next, no matter how it works or doesn't work, we're going to start thinking that's the solution, because that's the way our brains are made. It has nothing at all to do with our thoughts. It really has to do with just how our neurology is made. Because if you can get somebody agitated and angry, whatever you kind of say next, that's what they're going to believe is the solution. Maybe that person, that idea, that action. Fear is a great manipulator. But fear also is, how do we get out of fear? Well, we often have to get new information. And that brings us to our second horseman of accelerated aging, and that is ignorance. So if you just don't know that how remarkably capable your body is of healing, if you've been told that you really have to have the pharmaceutical industry come in and swoop and give you a well-dosed poison, and that's what pharmaceuticals are. That's why we have to have a license to prescribe them. And I'm really thankful we have all of them that we do. But if you're ignorant of the fact that your body is designed to heal, and that there are methods to help enable that healing, then you're never going to be able to access those. And then the next thing, what is the next horseman of early disease and disability? It's a cousin to fear and ignorance. It's denial. I talked about this a little bit on our talk about neurodegenerative disease and regenerative plasma exchange, because we see this great, hey, we've had some amazing results with patients with early memory loss, and seeing them actually get better. And so to think that there's a treatment for Alzheimer's disease is actually really hard for people. I didn't realize this until I was like, wow, I thought everybody was going to be excited, and not really, because it's such a fearful thing to start losing one's memory. It's so much, our cultural pattern has been just to deny that it's really a problem. Let's not talk about that. We're not going to talk about that. And if you do, then there's no potential for intervention. There's no potential to start changing the curve. You are doomed by denial. And so denial is, and it takes love to help people through denial. A lack of judgment, and also it really requires encouraging bravery, because why would you be in denial of something? Because you feel helpless, and you think that, man, I don't have a place to turn. I don't have anybody to turn to. There's no hope for me. So it's much better just to act as if it doesn't exist. It's reasonable, but it is terribly toxic. And then the final horseman of accelerated aging is inaction, just not doing it, just not taking action. Hey, you've conquered ignorance, you've conquered fear, you've conquered denial, and then you just don't do anything about it. The urgent gets in the way of the important again. And now you're down the path, and whoop, off on another. I'm sorry, I'm picking social media, but yeah, they deserve to be picked on. Off down another pathway of getting angry about something you can't do anything about. That just is dividing you and decreasing your connection to the people you love. Not such a great thing. So inaction of actually do those things that will help you. Go do bad. Forgive. Laugh. Watch a funny movie, believe it or not. How about that? Meditate. Learn to meditate. Take some nice, slow, deep breaths on a regular basis. Oh gosh, I'm getting a little message. My computer's running out of battery. Oh, ta-da! The cord was not plugged in well. There we go. That would have had accelerated aging of this webinar. So I'm glad we saw the warning sign, a symptom. It told me to take action, and I powered through. I powered through the fear of it all crashing, of the ignorance of the problem, of denial that it wasn't going to be a problem, and I took action. Now, there we go. You got to take what comes to you, folks. So, what's some action you could take? I want to invite you to join Maxwell Care if you're not already one of our patients here at Maxwell Clinic. Maxwell Care is a program that we have devised to answer this question of what creates health, to get to underlying causes, to be as specific as possible towards that individual's needs, because Each one of you are coming from a different starting place, right? We all come with different priorities. We come with different biology. We come with different sets of resources of time, money, energy, and effort. We come with different ideas of how health is going to happen. Some of us come very sick. Some of us come wanting to maximize more fully what we already enjoy. It's individualized care, but through a process, a team process, because great healthcare is way too difficult for any one individual. So we've constructed a team effort of collaboration that I think is one of the very best programs that exist in healthcare. And we're so delighted at the results that have already occurred since we launched it only a year ago. And encourage you, take that action. Go to our website, look at Maxwell Care, and learn more about that. So let's talk a little bit about the mechanisms of aging. All right, so we already said that aging is more degeneration than regeneration in any given time period, right? So what are the forces of degeneration? One that most of us understand is inflammation. And inflammation is literally burning. Oh, hey, I have a fire behind me. I have all these great, object lessons going on. But what is inflammation? Inflammation is there to destroy in the body on the level of cells and tissues. It is fire. So red, when things are inflamed, they're red, hot, swollen, and tender. And the diseases of inflammation all kind of end with itis. I challenge you, kind of point to a part of your body and I can name a disease for you, right? So it's like, okay, point to your nose. Oh, that's rhinitis, right? Nose inflammation. Your eye, conjunctivitis, or iritis, or retinitis. We put your skin, dermatitis, or periodontal disease, periodontitis. Inflammation is the problem. Where it shows up, that just happens to be a weak link because of injury or genetics or infection, et cetera. But inflammation is the problem. And understanding what are the things that feed forward inflammation in the body and what are the things that cause the body to pull back on inflammation. That is a major investigative process. And the answer for that is different for everybody. My social media people always hate it when I won't give them a simple list. Oh, here are the 5 steps to stop inflammation in your body. Now, man, everybody loves, here are the 5 steps. And how many things have you clicked on like that, right? But it's not real. It's marketing, not medicine. Medicine is stepping back and saying, tell me about your story. Let's listen. Let's find clues of why this might be. And then let's really investigate in your biology and see what we can find that has the most direct route to decreasing inflammation. Okay, so that's inflammation. Now, oxidation is burning, but that's on a molecular basis. That's inside your mitochondria. That's where you take fuel and mix it with oxygen and burn it and make a molecule called ATP that makes your energy. Guess what? When your ATP levels go down, you age in an accelerated fashion. And as your ATP levels go down, then your engines don't work as well. And you start kicking out more soot and smoke from that energy production process. And that's oxidative stress. So that is molecular fire, and inflammation is cellular and tissue level fire. They cross over between each other. So, but what's the chicken, what's the egg? It becomes really important. So other things that cause problems is glycation. So you know what I mean by glycation? It kind of sounds like glucose, because you're right. If you sugarcoat a molecule, you candy coat a molecule, it's no longer going to be able to do its function. And in the body, we measure a compound called hemoglobin A1C all the time, right? That's to measure like what's your average level of glycation. How much sugar are you bathing your cells and your molecules with, and how much of a candy coating is going on there? The higher your hemoglobin A1C, the more insulin resistance you have, and then pre-diabetes, and then finally diabetes after you cross a threshold of 6.5. Now, that number is entirely arbitrary, because we just know that, hey, above the number 6.5, people are really sick. They start to have problems with their eyes and their kidneys and their nerves and all sorts of things. So diabetes is just a line in the sand. But what you want is an optimal hemoglobin A1C running down more around 4.6, to 5.2. That makes a big difference when it comes to dementia, vascular disease, and all kinds of things. So there we go. We got inflammation, oxidation, and glycation. And then we get to starvation. Because guess what? When your blood vessels start not to work like they should, if they start getting glycated and inflamed, and now you get the buildup of cholesterol and you get plaque developing and your microvessels don't work, you don't get as much blood to your tissues. And then your tissues have this low-grade starvation that starts to happen. We have a remarkable little tool in our clinic called the GlycoCheck, which measures your glycocalyx. That is a lining, like a Teflon-like lining in the inside of your blood vessels. And when that starts to break down, that is actually one of the most important first steps in most chronic degenerative disease. And the test is so cool. So when you come into the clinic, we'll put a little video camera underneath your tongue, and then you get to see your red blood cells racing by inside your capillaries. And it takes about 100,000 images of capillaries and does about 1,000 measurements per capillary to measure how many 4, 5, and 6 micron capillaries you have. What's this Teflon coating thickness that's inside the blood vessels? And by doing so, we really get an understanding of how healthy your blood vessels are. How good are they at delivering oxygen and delivering nutrition and being able to carry away toxins and carbon dioxide? Because if you don't have many of those small capillaries, you don't have the surface area necessary to get all that done. There's a great supplement that we use a lot called Endocalyx Pro, and we dose it according to what we find on that particular study. And then we also think about, well, why would these blood vessels be damaged like they are? Because anyway, there's several different reasons. Exercise absolutely improves these things. Lowering your blood sugar improves these things. Finding the causes of inflammation, be that infections, toxins, injury, or just plain stress. Yeah, stress causes inflammation. And then inflammation turns around and causes more stress. So this is why health has to be holistic as we approach it, because if we can come from both of those sides and start figuring out, hey, why am I so stressed? Well, maybe you had a head injury at some point in time, and maybe those neurons are a little scrambled, so everything's harder for you. Well, in that case, things like quantitative EEG, measuring your brain waves and doing neurofeedback to help your brain become more efficient, now helps you process information. So therefore you can sleep better and you don't have as much stress, and now your inflammation can come down. It's beautiful that we are a system, and because we don't have to fix everything, but we do have to fix the weak links in the chain. We do have to fix the critical dysfunctions. So what are some of the other problems with aging? Well, catabolism. This means actually eating yourself up. Yeah, if the body can go into a process of eating up its own tissue, especially when there's inflammation. There's another concept called senescence. Some cells get cranky. They get, and they start to get old and they're not really doing their job. I kind of think of them like grouchy, cranky old men cells. And they will start, when they're not doing their job anymore, but they will secrete molecules that tell other cells not to do their job and to become inflamed. So as these senescent cells build up as we age, it causes a kind of like an avalanche, right? A feed forward process of degeneration happening in the body. What helps senescent? How can you get rid of some of these senescent cells that are building up in your body? Fasting. Fasting is remarkably helpful. And it can be as simple as intermittent fasting, or sometimes we'll prescribe multiple day fasts for our patients. You do want to have your doctor involved in these things, because while fasting has happened all through human history, because starvation has happened very frequently. Now, we're not quite used to it right now. So I just recommend talk to your clinician about that. But fasting basically says, whoa, there's not enough food coming in. There's not new food coming in. So I'm going to, the body gets a signal, says, well, let's recycle all the cells that aren't doing their job. And what a win-win situation that is. You get rid of these loafers that are basically causing problems in the body, and you get to use their raw material, recycle them, and turn on new stem cells to cause new levels of healing. So you have so much capacity to heal, but you got to do it. You have to take action. And then there's this problem. Another problem of aging is when cells forget to die. We call that cancer, right? Or they evade the immune system, and so they no longer are able to they're no longer can be found by our immune system. And that is a problem of the immune system losing its capacity to be active. We find that in aging, I actually think a better name for Alzheimer's disease would be age-related immunodementia, because the immune system seems to be primary. If your immune system is up and running and feisty, you can fight off the infections, and you don't start building up beta amyloid inside the brain, and you can get a long way. That's why finding chronic infections and things like that is so important. But also with cancer, because if your body can't identify those cells as being inappropriately proliferating, then they get to proliferate and then start causing problems. So again, what do you do about these things? Well, I would encourage you, go to maxwellclinic.com, look at our program, Maxwell Care. It was very specifically designed to start digging into the fundamentals of what creates health, and then to continue that process from there. This process goes incredibly deep, but it's so important to nail the fundamentals, because they are the fundamentals. Like I've already mentioned, the GlycoCheck is a very unique test. Another test that we're doing a lot more is a methylome testing. So a methyl group is a single carbon atom, and it sticks on your DNA in a very predictable fashion as you age. So an additional carbon group will stick on this piece of DNA when you hit 60, and they'll stick on this piece of DNA when you hit 65. And there's a great average. I'm on the scientific advisory board for a company that has built a test that you can do 850,000 of these single carbon atom islands on the DNA, and we can map out with great accuracy how biologically old you are. That's really helpful. And we actually have other mechanisms to say, how quickly are you aging? So if you have accelerated aging, it'd be a good thing to know about now rather than 5 years from now, because you can do a lot more about aging today than you can if you don't do anything for 5 years. And likewise, this methylome testing can help us predict like what diseases you may be more susceptible to. And it puts the power back in your hands. I mean, that's really amazing. You know, I want to encourage you, and we start thinking about aging, we have a whole lot more potential for overcoming this than you might imagine. So I've already mentioned, you know, quantitative EEG and cognitive testing. If there's a problem going on with the brain, let's take a look at the brain. You know, psychiatrists are one of the only professions that don't examine the organ they treat. Drives me nuts. If somebody has problems with attention or mood or cognition or memory, then let's look at the function of the brain. And if we put a cap on someone's head, measure the electricity, because the brain is an organ of electricity, right? It's consuming 23% of your energy every day. That little 2-pound ball of mush is really metabolically active because it's making electricity all day long. And so so it's think about that. If there's a problem with symptoms with the brain, let's look at the brain. We'll consider getting an MRI, look at small blood vessels. The number of people that we find that have chronic small blood vessel disease in the brain at an early age is remarkable. And what did I say about organ starvation? If the blood vessels aren't healthy, then every organ in the brain is going to suffer, especially the organs that have the most need for energy. And those are neurons. So like peripheral neuropathy or dementia, all of those things show up when the blood vessels are not healthy. Okay. I've already talked about stressflammation. That's my own term. But if we could just handle the problems of stress, inflammation, and glycation, oh my arcs, so many chronic degenerative diseases would shift their curve. And those are totally doable. Good for you. Then what brought me into the realm of talking about longevity medicine more and more was really my work in regenerative plasma exchange. We've been, matter of fact, I have to make a little mark. This is the very last group visit webinar that's going to be coming from our office that was on Granny White and Old Hickory, because we're moving to 103 Continental in Brentwood here. We're just about 4 buildings down. We can still see Old Hickory from our windows, and we're having a massive expansion. We're so excited. The number of patients that continue to seek us out continues to go up. We're putting in a center for regenerative plasma exchange, and we're starting the Maxwell Clinical Research Center. So we're going to be diving into doing the research so we can publish and show our results, because we have to change healthcare. And we can only do that by telling our story. So anyway, the regenerative plasma exchange, why does it work? Well, it works because stem cells act the age of their environment. It turns out that if you put a stem cell in a healthier environment, it will act healthier. No small wonder, right? The rest of the world is that way. You put a child in a healthy environment, and they're probably going to grow up more functional. Fair? You put a part of your body in a healthy, and you put your body in a healthy environment with love around you and good food and nurturance and opportunity to be in the dark, to go to sleep and exercise in the light. Guess what? You're going to be healthier. Same thing goes for your stem cells. So if your stem cells are in this stew of these senescent cells releasing their factors of aging, their inflammasomes, if your stem cells are hanging out in an environment full of glycation and increased blood sugar, if your stem cells are hanging out in an area of a lot of toxins or oxidized albumin, they're not going to function well. Okay, they're just not. And as a result, they're not going to do the job of repairing tissue in an accelerated fashion. What we found, and this is shown in tissue studies or shown in like Petri dishes, as well as animal studies and now human studies, we just, it hasn't been published yet, but we have completed the very first analysis of regenerative plasma exchange using high throughput single cell RNA transcriptomics, proteomics, and metabolomics. This is a groundbreaking study. We're hacking and figuring out what are the underlying causes of disease and degeneration. And then once we understand that, it gives us a lot more hope for making our interventions simpler, easier, cheaper, more accessible. But for right now, regenerative plasma exchange is doing that. Been really, really, really exciting. So I want to put that out there because within the next year, we're going to be asking for research subjects. And so people who are highly diligent in their health and want to help us find some of these solutions that are out there, we're going to be studying a host of different interventions. We're still going to be providing it clinically for people because many people won't meet the research criteria. And like I said, denial and inaction are the biggest detriments to the progression of disease. So if you think your loved one's memory is sliding, you think you have need for more stem cell regeneration, please don't wait. Don't think, oh, I'm going to get in a research study. It's probably not going to happen, but anyway, we're all for you. We're all for you. You know, I want you to really think about what's our goal here? You know, what is our goal at Maxwell? It keeps boiling down to more good days, right? More good days. Make the days that you have better, and then get more of them. Because that's what it means to be Maxwell, to enjoy the fullest of your potential, both genetically, spiritually, physically, and then to be satisfied in the moment where you are. So both striving and being satisfied simultaneously. So I want to encourage you to be relentless in your rational optimism. I want to encourage you to continue to dig in and find those things that matter for your particular health. Eat whole food, go to bed, get rid of social media as much as you possibly can. All right. Think about you are always having your brain washed, right? I mean, that's just the way neurology works. Whatever we're around, that's what we will become. And so decide which washing machine you're going to stick your head in, because you will be brainwashed in some way, shape, or form. So is it something that's increasing the joy and goodness? Is it helping you to be productive? Is it helping you to create and make the kind of world that you want to live for your children and grandchildren? And I just want to encourage you, detoxify where you can there. So I think we're going to shift to some questions, but I just want to say, first of all, how much fun this has been. I have a little screen here of a whole bunch of pictures of many of you. At Maxwell, we are trying to create a haven for called healers. We have a couple of new clinicians joining us within the next 3 months. So excited about that. We're going to be training them in our methods of care. We're super excited to have even more join us, because we see how clinicians are suffering. So if you know of a great clinician, physician, nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, somebody who would find a good home here, let them know about us. Okay. We really want clinicians to thrive, because we know if they thrive, their patients will thrive, and they have a lot better chance of getting to 120 in a vibrant way. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Let's go to some questions. All right. So feel good. All right. All right. So 100. So the comment is, I want to be 120 and feel great. Great function and mobility, active mentally, socially, sexually, excellent memory, and enjoying the family. I am the change I want to see in the world. Wow. How about that? Think of that. Part of my drive and passion around dementia happens to be, we need to raise up eldership, because elders have a very important role in society. And as the world has gotten faster and technology seems to leave our older members in the dust, we have to forget that the human side, right, not the technological side of our existence, but the human side is greatly assisted by healthy elders practicing eldership and being that important component of our society. So, okay. So question, who are the two men over my head in the video? Man, they are directly over my head, aren't they? Well, those are two of my most important heroes. That's Will and Charlie Mayo. And like most people know, I went to Vanderbilt to medical school and then went to Mayo for residency and practice. And I'll tell you, the story of the Mayo Clinic is a remarkable story. And to be honest, Maxwell Clinic is modeled after Mayo Clinic. And we very much want to be the Mayo Clinic of whole person healthcare. One of the things that happens at Mayo is, it used to be, it's not quite what it used to be, as so many things are, right? It used to be, when I was there, part of my job is for, patients would come in with an undescribed problem, very complex problem, have seen all kinds of doctors, and my job was to intake them and listen to them, and then farm them out to all kinds of specialists, right? And you see the oncologist and the pathologist, and then we're going to do a consultation with neurologic immunologist, and then we're going to and have them get the best information from the highest end subspecialists, and then all of that information will come back to me as the quarterback, and we'd sort through that information and say, okay, now how does it apply to this patient? And my job would be to coordinate and talk with all these docs. And that's really what we do here. That is our model of care at Maxwell, to be very relational and dive deep. Unfortunately, we don't have that ease of network of specialists that we had at Mayo Clinic. They don't have it anymore either. Unfortunately, it's gotten anyway, there's been some changes that haven't necessarily been as patient-centric as I'd hope they are. But one of the things Will and Charlie Mayo said is the needs of the patient come first. The needs of the patient come first. And as a core value, that's powerful. And Mayo is run by physicians. It still runs by committees of physicians that are assisted by businessmen and business people. And I think that is a profound difference. Healthcare should be run by those that have taken oaths that have had the most training and have taken oaths to protect patient interest, and because you get a different outcome. So anyway, that's Will and Charlie Mayo, two of my big heroes. So Dr. Haase, I was diagnosed with vestibular schwannoma 2 years ago. I started on OncoDetox ES. That was the same thing I mentioned about raising glutathione, and the tumor is gone. I've been dismissed from Roswell Park Cancer Institute as it continues to be gone. Thank you, Dr. Haase. Wow. That's an amazing story. That's an amazing story. Sorry, I'm kind of choked up. Because the body really is designed to heal, and all too often we want things to make sense, right? And we want there to be some specialist that tells us this is we know what you have and we know how to treat it, even if those results are terrible. And I think we have a very important job to harness, to be aware of our neurology and how each of us are susceptible to bias. Our colleagues that practice far more conventional medicine, that kind of follow a cookbook methodology of, as if we're going to name a disease, we're going to blame the disease, we're going to tame the disease, no matter what harm it takes in the meantime. I think they may be missing out on just how many other things can be helpful in the treatment of complex chronic disease of all types, right? We kind of laugh. People say, well, what kind of diseases do you treat? I always say, we don't treat diseases, we help people, right? Sir William Osler, and that's another photo I have elsewhere. Sir William Osler was really the father of modern medicine. And he said it's way more important to know what type of person has the disease than what disease the person has. That kind of sounds like, well, wait a second, isn't that your job to know what the disease is? Guess what? Diseases are they're terrible descriptors of the complexity of a human. And so when we get wrapped up in the name and blame and tame game of disease, rather than being curious about what are all the factors that could be addressed in that individual's health and process, and what are all the factors, all the different ways that we can support them, we miss out. We just miss out. And we age prematurely, we age more profoundly. Some, you know, my own sister died as a result of too much medical care. She died cancer free, but she died from the result of a very aggressive treatment protocol that some of the specialists that cared for her thought was a bit extreme. And so we have to always think about the harm that can be done with intervention and seek very clearly to do least harm. Remember, doctors and properly prescribed medications are the third or fourth leading cause of death in the United States. That's from the Institute of Medicine, a very conservative medical group. Those are shocking numbers, aren't they? Third or fourth leading cause of disease. And I didn't say misprescribed medications, not medical errors. I'm talking about properly prescribed. Because when you put a lot of different medications in one soup, you don't know what's going to happen. You just don't. We don't have the studies at all to know in these remarkably genetically unique individuals, if we put in one compound that blocks, inhibits, or impairs a biologic function, we don't even know what's going to happen when we put it in any one person. But now if you put a cocktail in, we call that polypharmacy. And in medical school, it gets drilled into us repeatedly. Polypharmacy is one of the worst practices that can take place. So then, the more medication somebody's on, the more likely it is that there will be an adverse event, and that could be fatal. All right. What are my views on vegan diets? Well, I actually think a vegan diet is great as long as you cheat enough. And I'm being very serious about that. If you look at our jaws, we have the jaws of an omnivore. That means we have teeth in the back that are for grinding like herbaceous materials. We have canines that are for ripping and tearing flesh, and we have incisors for clipping things off. Structure and function go together. And I have seen that while we have drastically overdone how much low quality animal products that are in our diet in general, and when people switch to a vegan diet, they often drastically improve their overall food quality. Some people shift over to become a breaditarian, and that doesn't do them any good because a lot of the vegan food is also very high in sugar or starch. And then we've actually seen new diabetics come to play as they've shifted to a vegan diet. It's very clear that too much glucose in the diet is a problem. But if you center on very complex carbohydrates, oils in vegan oils, that's amazing. And we know that phytonutrients, the compounds that are in fruits and vegetables, turn on our genes, right? Many of the supplements that we have that have the best data, these pills are concentrates of the awful tasting things in fruits and vegetables. And so sometimes the only way we can get them past our mouth is in a capsule, and that can do us some real good. One of my favorite ones is Berga Plus A and Berg Essence. These are two compounds that are based off of citrus bergamot, and they've been amazing at lowering cholesterol and lowering inflammation. Like Berg Essence, we do that one capsule twice a day, and we've seen some really great improvements from blood glucose. So anyway, but vegan diets, again, it is individual for that person. And then there are some foods, some molecules you just can't get from a vegan diet. And so that's why I say I think a vegan diet is great as long as you cheat. Blue zones. Oh gosh, I'm so glad somebody brought up blue zones. Blue zones seem to focus on community and purpose. They also focus mostly on a diet that's low in protein and high in veggies. Would love to hear your thoughts on a few ways to help cells rejuvenate. And say, thank you. That's an amazing story. What I love about the clinic is that you all help take away fear. That really warms my heart. warms my heart, because if we can decrease fear and increase certainty in your own personal health plan, we're already making a lot of headway. Absolutely, the blue zones are these areas of the world that seem to have, or that do have, a markedly higher number of people over the age of 100 that are very healthy. And so some great work was done going to say, well, what are the characteristics of these areas? And there's about 9 major characteristics, and among them have a lot to do with community. Having a stable group of people that you walk through life with. Pretty cool. That doesn't mean that you're in the same group on social media. That means you actually do life with them. And most all of them had a little alcohol, but how they had alcohol is it was a happy hour that they all got together with the people in their tribe, in their community. That was amazing. Diets were highly varied. All of them, except for one, did contain some meat, but the meat was more like a condiment. Like I said, vegans who cheat. It's a pretty good way of thinking about this. And so that's a great opportunity there. One way to help cells rejuvenate, I've already mentioned that fasting is profound. Just have more periods in your life when you're not eating. It turns out caloric restriction is really hard. If you just try to restrict calories, it makes people miserable. But if instead you have periods of time, maybe 14 or 16 hours a day without eating and 8 hours of eating, we call that like time compressed feeding, if we want to make you sound like a laboratory animal. And that gives that body an ability to start recycling some of the old cells and causing other cells to sprout. All right, so let me go on to another question. My husband's 53 years old and recently had a brain MRI. One of the findings was small vessel ischemic disease. His doctor said it was nothing to worry about because it's a common finding and it's early stage. How fast does it progress? Is it now too soon to take action? Well, I think the appropriate term for, small vessel ischemic disease in the brain, those are micro strokes. Okay. Yes, they're common. That doesn't make it good. This is, I love, my grandparents used to say, oh, they have hardening of the arteries. And I went to medical school and I went, oh, wow, those elders of mine, they were so quaint in what they called things. Turns out it's hardening of the arteries. That's the problem. It's actually hardening of the capillaries is a big part of the problem. And absolutely, he already has brain damage. Now, you may not be able to see that with symptoms, but the truth of the matter is that's brain injury. Our brains have massive redundancy. So for instance, once people start having Parkinson's, start getting a little tremor, by the time they start having that tremor, they may have already lost 90% of the cells that control normal movement. 90. They're down to 10% of their starting cell population. Our brains have huge redundancy, so it's very uncommon to start seeing major symptoms show up. It's one of the reasons why it's so important to do cognitive screening. We do use a test called the CNS Vital Signs or MoCA. You just want to really put a line in the sand to say, hey, this is my brain function. And even then, I would strongly recommend he should have a GlycoCheck test done. Let's find out what's the health of his glycocalyx, this lining in the inside of the arteries. Should have endopat done. So how well do his cells respond to a hypoxic challenge? That's important. I think I treat chronic small vessel disease in the brain as a 5-alarm fire, because I don't want any more cells in the brain to die that don't have to die. We are already fighting time, erosion, friction, oxidation, inflammation, atrophy. We're fighting all those things just by accumulating birthdays. We certainly don't need to have it accelerated by small vessels, collapsing and ceasing to feed the part of the brain that they treat. they serve. So, I don't have a specific question, but I'm happy for all you do at Maxwell. Every time I see notices or listen to videos, I feel like you're doing a great job practicing the medicine in the way I love. I sure hope to become part of the Maxwell team. Wonderful. That's from a physician out there in the cyberspace. So wonderful. We'd love that. The very important point you made tonight, and you cannot overemphasize, is collaboration with your patient's team of other medical professionals to determine a great solution for the patient's problem. Exactly. I worked with this patient's doctor, Dr. Capasso, one of my dear friends in Florida, to help recover from liver failure. We determined the cause is due to opioids my physician gave me for a broken ankle. And I'm impressed you never gave me a drug to help the symptom. Not a question, but an observation. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we always have to keep asking why. I mean, and as I recall it, you were not an easy case. and I treasure the hairs I have left. And so I was pull out more of them, trying to think of what exactly is the cause. But the good news is, when you remove problems, there's an old saying that if you're sitting on a tack, it takes a lot of aspirin to feel better. And I think what we should have is a relentless passion for finding the tacks that we happen to be sitting on, because then and only then is the body unimpaired and ability to create health for itself. So, another question, do I recommend the tests mentioned today, the GlycoCheck, the methylome test of biologic age, endopat, quantitative EEG, for all patients or just patients with specific symptoms? Thank you. Love this talk. Thank you very much. Well, here's the challenge, right? Our world of healthcare isn't set up to reimburse the goal of creating health. Everything in our insurance, or I may call it the unsurance system, is set up to treat acute disease. And that's really what our United States healthcare system is. We're an acute disease, system. And we actually do that quite well for many things. You go in the emergency room, you have a really severe illness, we come keep people alive and pull them through some terrible circumstances. But that's not what most of our healthcare problems are. Most of our healthcare problems have a lot to do with our lifestyle and our individual variation. And so some of these tests I've talked about are covered by insurance. And so we run into this challenge of how do we take an oath to care for people. And so we are, as clinicians, are always struggling with how do we help you apply your limited resources for your best health? Does that make sense? Because all of us, and listen, I have several billionaires as patients, and they have limited resources. They don't have limited resources of money, but they have limited resources of time, of energy, of focus, of community. All God's children's got troubles, and none of us have everything. So our job, in this quest that we're on together, is how do we help match your resources towards your greatest outcome? I would say, absolutely, I would like you to have all of those tests done. I think we should be much more investigative about underlying causes of illness. We even have tests that help search for, circulating tumor cells, or what's your likelihood for cancer. And sometimes it's frankly hard for us because, we know that not everybody can afford everything. But we want people to have everything to serve their greater need. So this is why the most important thing that we can do is listen. And we start where we are with what we got, and we march forward together. Always knowing that, hey, we may have to save up to do that particular test. We may have to budget that. But it's part of this journey together. Creating health, the process of Maxwell, is a journey. It's not a destination, and so and it's a journey we get to do together. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank all of you. We've had, wow, so many people attending this. For those of you out there, we've had hundreds of people that are engaged, and you're part of the Maxwell movement. This is not about having a clinic. Okay. It's honestly not. I really believe we have to transform healthcare. We have to start listening to patients. We need to work together to create the solutions necessary. There's always going to be a better way. And our commitment to you is to always be open to learning that better way for you, and to walk alongside in a way that's going to be functional. So, well, with that, I'm going to throw some water on the fire. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have started an electrical storm, but thank you very much for joining me for this fireside chat. I hope it's been useful and encouraging to you. You are very important in this world. You are here for a purpose, and you're perfect just the way you are, and you could use a little work. All right, this is Dr. David Haase signing off. Bye-bye.